I'm a big believer in people sticking with things they do best. Of course, you can and perhaps should branch out and try different things, but if these different things that you're trying out aren't working for you, it's prudent to return to your roots. Martin Scorsese recently talked about returning to his roots in an interview with Shortlist.com from I don't want to say Hollywood movies because I feel that's selling him short, even as he undoubtedly has become something akin to a Hollywood director in recent years. So let's just say from big budget films to going back to films he made in the golden 70s. Films with small budgets but in which he had unlimited freedom to be creative and to take substantial risks. In the interview, Scorsese talks about how the big budgets he's been given had hampered him with obligations and responsibilities to other people, and how he's dying to return to shooting low-budget, down-and-dirty street movies. And he most certainly should. Just like Michael Jordan was right to go back to playing basketball after his unsuccessful detour playing baseball, and Lindsay Lohan did well to go back to her big-boobied self after a stint as an anorexic. People should do what they do best. That's how I feel about Telltale Games going back to the Sam & Max series. Now, don't get me wrong, Telltale Games has not entirely failed in branching out to other IPs. Strong Bad's Cool Games for Attractive People had its moments. Wallace & Gromit's Grand Adventures retained some of the film's charm. And even Tales of a Monkey Island, well, it didn't entirely suck, the YouTube joke notwithstanding. But it's with Sam & Max that Telltale made its name, and it's good to see Telltale Games return to the series. I don't know what it is, but Telltale Games gets Sam & Max. Perhaps they just didn't quite understand the quaint British humor in Wallace & Gromit. Perhaps they just didn't tune into the spirit of a Monkey Island series. And even with Strong Bad being most familiar to the nihilistic and dark and satiric humor found in Sam & Max, they kind of seem to miss some of the notes. But parody they can do. Dark and violent and lowball humor they can do. And Sam & Max episode 301, The Penal Zone, is a fine example of Telltale Games diddling around within a familiar and comfortable zone. I realized in playing the game that there's a lot of dialogue, and most of the dialogue takes place in a Ask 20 Questions format, or the 5W and 1H questions format. Who are you? Why are you here? How did you get here? Where's your partner? When is he coming back? What have you done for me lately? And this kind of dialogue is usually extremely boring and makes a lot of games painful to trudge through. But Sam & Max is not one of those games. The Ask 20 Questions format works so well in this series because the questions that are asked and the answers that are provided and the responses by Sam & Max to the answers are all amusing. And I think the main reason why they're so amusing is because these characters are just out of this world. They are entirely wacky and off the hinge. And Telltale does out of this world extremely well, perhaps because a lot of these developers that work there are out of this world. That's not to say that these characters are entirely unfamiliar and thus unbelievable. They're grounded in the sense that they're all based on something, like a culture, or someone, like a celebrity or a certain group of people, so there is a sense of familiarity to them. After all, Sam & Max thrives in parodying American culture, and that's when the series is at its strongest. But it's this no-holds-barred approach to parody, this make them as wacky and stupendous as possible attitude that's evident in the series, that makes the traditional Ask 20 Questions approach to dialogue in the series so entertaining and drives the game forward. And it's no different here in this episode. Take the villain in this episode as an example. He's literally out of this world, as in, he's a space gorilla named Skunkape, or as Sam and Max like to call him, Skunk Ape. There's something very licentious about the way he craves to destroy the Earth for no apparent reason than for the sake of destroying it. And yet he's got a James Earl Jones-like regality about him, mostly because the voice actor does a pretty damn good job imitating James Earl Jones. We've all seen these types before, the sophisticated yet animalistic bad guy, like say in Star Wars. I mean, Darth Vader is that guy. He's sophisticated, mainly because he's voiced by James Earl Jones, the king of regal voices. Yet he's very much, well, a bit of an animal and kind of insane. Skunkape is Darth Vader on crack, and there's where the humor resides in seeing what Darth Vader on crack will do and say. And Telltale Game knows, insert someone's name, on crack and does it very well. In fact, the whole episode is on crack, more so than any of the previous episodes that I've played. This episode doesn't waste any time, but gets the wackiness going from the very get-go, mainly by employing a Pulp Fiction-esque out-of-sequence narrative, in that you begin with a madcap ending, with you controlling Sam & Max and attempting to stop Skunkape's bid to destroy Earth. employing this out-of-sequence narrative and dunking the players into the wacky world head first, instead of starting with the usual comparatively tepid in Sam and Max's office intro of the past episodes, was, I felt, quite brilliant, as it got the wackiness and the jokes rolling immediately. Not to say that every joke is a hit. In fact, compared to other episodes they've done in the past, there were more misses and, perhaps, fewer hits in this episode. In fact, this episode came close to doing what Monkey Island did with its double anal painful YouTube joke, in having one too many groan out loud, I can't believe they made such an obvious jokes. I mean, just look at the title for this episode, the Penal Zone. You just know you're going to encounter a couple of obnoxious penis jokes somewhere along the line. But for all the banal Penal Zone jokes, there are brilliant moments flecked throughout. There was a dig at Bronx that I'm not sure people outside of New York would necessarily get, and a joke about the out-of-sequence timeline that I especially enjoyed. To say the least, there are enough hits, both big and small, that the 4 hours or so it took me to reach the ending never felt laborious, and managed to keep me tuned in. But where this episode shines is in the puzzles. I always felt that Telltale games did good puzzles. They weren't brilliant, certainly. I never felt beguiled by their wit. But at the least, they were at times clever, and most importantly, sensible. As in, they didn't make you pull out your hair in frustration and want to murder someone after finding out the solutions at GameFAQs.com because the puzzles and the solutions were just absolutely retarded. No, they made sense within their respective settings, and were fun to solve. But the puzzles in the Penal Zone are something else altogether. And it's mostly because Max, our lovable, hyperkinetic wacky rabbit, has gained psychic abilities. For example, Max has the ability to glimpse at an object's or person's future so you can get a hint of what you're supposed to do to solve a puzzle. And that may seem like spoiling the fun of solving the puzzles on your own, but it doesn't spoil it one bit. In fact, it adds a layer of depth that is rarely seen in adventure games and greatly enhances the puzzles, not to mention that it allows for a few laugh-out-loud gags. I'm not going to give anything away lest it spoil your fun, but I dare say that the puzzles this time around are quite brilliant, and at the very least inventive. You primarily get to use two of Max's abilities, the glimpsing into the future bit, and another one in which Max and whoever is touching him are able to teleport to any phone, as long as Max knows the phone number. But there are abilities that you get to use in the beginning of the episode that are obviously ripe with potential, and that I'm excited to see how Telltale incorporates them in future episodes. And to top it all off, the episode has a surprise ending of sorts. It out-Pulp Fiction's Pulp Fiction. While Pulp Fiction resorted to the, so that's what the ending you saw in the beginning was all about, type of mini revelation, Sam and Max completely redoes the ending that it gave away in the beginning. Again, not to give anything away, but I was tickled by this twist and appreciated Telltale Games for taking the otherwise conventional story around the block. It's nice to see Telltale Games going back to what they do best. They just get Sam and Max. They get parody on crack. And that they took something familiar and really put their thinking caps to use by implementing new puzzle-solving techniques and semi-unconventional storytelling makes this episode and the entire season worth getting excited about.
President, you are the ruler of this planet?
Oh no, I'm just President of the United States. We're only one of many united nations working
You're
together
alone
to
here,
achieve...
sir. You can speak freely.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm in charge pretty much.
Perfect.